Hey guys, it's Roy from ANSgear, and we've got a Tippmann two-finger double trigger that we're going to install in the 98 Custom right here. So what you're going to get is this setup right here. We've got our trigger, and the trigger is assembled in there, so there's nothing you need to remove from the old trigger and put it into the new trigger. And then we have the trigger guard that's going to go in as well. So we're going to put these two pieces in, and we're going to remove this out. Now, depending on the model of the 98 Custom you have, if it's an older version before the Platinum series, this whole side piece will come off. If it's the Platinum series, like what we're going to work with right here, we'll be able to just take the side off by itself, or one section of the side, because it is split in the middle right here, and then work from the back side right there. So first thing we're going to do is kind of loosen a couple things up. The ASA at the bottom right here, I'm just going to loosen this. I'm not going to remove it. Sometimes when this is super tight, pushing against the bottom of the frame, when it comes time to separate the frame off, because this ASA is so tight, it can bind up and not want it to come off. And then also, these top three screws along here, I'm just going to make sure that they're not tight as well, because sometimes that can hinder getting the two pieces apart. Because this one is pushing down this way, this one's pushing up this way, and it just doesn't want to allow this to come off. All right, next thing I'm going to do is undo all the main body screws right here. So we've got the one you saw at the bottom, this one here on the side, this one up at the top. And I'm not taking the screws out. I'm just backing them up till they are completely free of the nut that's on the other side. All right, so there we go. Now we're going to get this half off of here. Now, as we remove the half off, there's a lot of things underneath there that we want to make sure don't just come bursting out of there. There's the spring and the cap on the back. Now the spring is under tension right now because it's in the gun. So we want to make sure that as we lift this up, that the cap back here doesn't come with it. The cap stays down in the bottom half and keeps everything where it should be down there. And then also there's a lot of pins that hold the trigger in place. And we want to make sure we don't lose any of those pins, because sometimes as we separate the two halves, some of the pins will stay on the bottom half. Some of the pins will stick in the top half. And as we pull them apart, we want to make sure that they all go back down into the bottom half right there. I'm also going to grab a flathead screwdriver so that I can get in there and I can kind of wedge some things apart. I put this down in here and I kind of gave it a little twist to help separate them apart. And then I'm going to come back over to this side and I'm going to make sure that this, you can see that it was wanting to slide up that way. I want to make sure that it stays down in the bottom down there so that it's on this half, not coming out with this half right here. And then I'm just going to kind of keep working my way around until I can get that off. Now this is obviously a Platinum series. I'm able to pull this one off. This also has the ACT in it. You can see by the linkage right here and the extra spring assembly that's up along the top right here. So that's the ACT version right there. Now I'm going to kind of look underneath this and look for stuff. As you can see, the sear and the sear pivot stayed on this side. I want to make sure I transfer them back over to here. But all the trigger pins, that pin, that pin, that pin, that pin, all the pins stayed on this side, which is good. Sometimes these pins will be stuck into these holes over here, and it can get in the, or you can forget to move them over. You lift this thing out, the pins fall down, and then the pins are lost. We also have our sear spring came out. That sear spring is going to sit in there, but we're going to put it on this side when we're all done. So we'll just go ahead and get the things back to the place they should be. One thing I see with these sear setups right here is the housing, or the little cap, I guess, to the sear pin it is flat on one side. So it is round along here. And then on this side, it is flat. And this side is round. If we look at the hole where this goes into right here, the top is flat and then it's round along the bottom. We have to make sure that this goes in that way, that the flat section goes on the flat spot and the round section goes in the round spot. Otherwise, if you just stick it down in there, when you go to put these two halves back together, it'll smash this plastic cap and it will bind up the sear and the sear won't move. So we want to make sure that it's all in the right spot. So that's going to go in like that. Now, if you're unsure as to whether this top cap is going to fit into here properly, you can pop this cap off the pin and stick it into the other side. I'm looking at it from right here, and I can see that the top flat section is nice and level right there. So when I go to put the other half on, I shouldn't really have a problem with getting that in there. Next thing I'm going to remove is the trigger spring. I'm going to pull this spring out because I'm going to use it when I put the new one back in. All right. So let's move this up and out. So I'm just going to kind of wiggle this up and bring it up and out of this setup. I'm going to take the new one and I'm going to put it in. And I'm going to use the same two holes that we pulled this one off of to put the new one down in. All right. There we go. Now we can take our trigger spring and we can put that in there. That way the spring is going to push the trigger back forward right there. Our sear spring is going to come up and go onto there. And that's going to push the sear up every time we act or it drops down. We've also have our safety, which I'm going to take out of this. I'm going to put my safety right back in there. Safety is there to basically act as a safety so that you can't pull the trigger when the safety is pushed in. And then when you pop the safety forward, the trigger will swing and activate by itself. Or when you pull it, not by itself. Now we're going to take our trigger guard and we're going to put this on as well. So the trigger guard is going to fit like that. And then we're going to put it all back together. I'm going to check my cap to make sure that's still in the right spot. All my pins are still in there. Both of my springs are in the right spot. I have my safety in. My trigger guard is there. The hole is lined up. Everything seems to be good. I just want to now make sure I remove my single trigger guard so that I can go ahead and put on my two trigger guard. My double trigger guard. My safety is stuck right there. So I'm going to pull this back out again. And again, if I have to lift anything up and out, I want to make sure that everything stays in the right spot. I'm going to put this back in here. There we go. If you ever go to tighten a screw down when you're putting these back in, one of the nuts fell off the back side. I got to figure out which one that is. You go to tighten and it feels like it binds up right away. Always back it up a turn and then go back in. That will keep it from cross threading. That's why with stuff like this, I don't recommend doing it with a electric drill. You can. I wouldn't recommend it. That's the one that's the nut fell off of. So let's take our nut. I'm going to put it back on there. I'm going to hold that with my finger. Then we can put that down in. Give everything else a little snug. Bottom, snug that up. Remember, we loosened this up. And then along the top as well. All right, so there you have it. The install, the Tippmann double trigger for the 98 Custom. Install is very, very simple, very straightforward. Doesn't take more than a couple minutes if you're familiar with your gun right there. If not, just follow along with the video. Super easy to put in. So the Tippmann 2-finger trigger or double trigger for the 98 Custom, get yours today at ANSgear.com.